Right, hello. We're just checking to see that the record button's on. Right, hello, my name's Tony, and if you can see this video, it means I've probably put it, well, I must have put it on YouTube. What I'm about to attempt, my project, is to show you how to modify an old corn cob to vape with an electronic automatic switch, I suppose a pressure switch, and an 18350 battery. Right, here goes. Wish me luck. Right, I hope that shows my workplace. Glasses on again. Oh, I didn't show you tools. Soldering iron, definitely. A little file. There's a lump of blue tack. Wire cutters. Pliers. Solder, my soldering station. Some of my previous pipes that I might have to show you while the glue is drying for maybe 5 minutes. 2-part epoxy glue, some wires, maybe some potential caps for the bowl. They're my little self-adhesive beads that I usually use on top of the LED to diffuse it a bit. That blue LED is a bit bright. Some heat shrink sleeving. Setting the camera up on my window. I have been out earlier to see outside the window to see that this appears to view the work area. Right. Right, battery fits in the bowl. Right, a standard corn cob is usually a size of 30mm diameter by 40mm height on the bowl, and obviously the battery fits in there, which is an 18350, 18mm by 35mm, and we've got about 5mm to spare on top of that. Now, as you can see, well, I didn't tell you, the bowl is usually drilled about 16mm to 18mm, so that's not quite big enough for a battery, so I've already drilled out the bowl to 20mm. That leaves enough space all around for a few little wires. That's the bowl side. On the stem side, we have got to fit the auto switch in, which at the end of the auto switch is a 510 connector. Here's a 510 connector. I didn't have the right drill when I prepared this bowl a couple of weeks ago. You should have an 8.5mm drill for at least that approximately 1 inch. That is the length of the, yeah, it is 1 inch. This is the length of the 510 pressure switch, and a little PCB in there that is some probably voltage regulating circuit. So I have drilled it out, and it's a bit too large. You see the 510 just flops in there further than it should. So I shall be using 2-part epoxy glue to glue the to hold the 510 in there, so that hopefully it's just about flush with the end, maybe a tiny bit out, tiny bit out. Well, hopefully. Right, I am using epoxy, but I believe that a lot of people, when they're gluing the 510 into the end of a stem, use hot melt glue. Now I've got one of those, but the few times that I've used it, it sets too quick for me. I'm not a fast enough worker to get everything, it seems to go off in less than 10 seconds, and you would have to get this all coated within that probably 5 seconds, then another 5 seconds to get it in there and positioned. Well, probably with the aid of I think this is called an ego connector. So let me just put the ego connector on there. Might help later on, just to hold it in a position while the glue goes off for 3 minutes or whatever. I'll probably put a natty on the end of that as well, so that you can see that you're achieving straightness. Obviously, if it was glued, if it was drilled to 8.5 millimeters, you wouldn't really have all of these problems, because there's very little slop when it's drilled correctly. It just goes in there quite tightly and uses the tiniest amount of glue, which of course is far more efficient at achieving a bond and the straightness that you obviously want when you're coming out of there. So, well, it's not got to go on there anyhow, that's just my spare. Right, how are we going to do this? What we have got is a battery and a bowl. Alright, I've already drawn this out to practice how I'm going to show it. We have got a pipe and a stem, and these are the constant bits that's a battery. We've got a ground, negative, whatever connection at the bottom end, and I've got my plus at the top. And now we have a 510 auto switch. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. Focusing, right. On the end we've got the gold connector, then there's these plastic bits that hold the regulated circuit, the regular voltage regulation. Then we have got a black wire and a white wire. Don't know if I've managed to focus that and center it. Black wire and a white wire. The black wire is partially stripped up near this top end, partially stripped so that you can solder a wire on there, and at the top end there is an LED circuit board. It's usually, well, I've only ever seen it in blue, but I think there may be different colors on there for when it faults. They're really tiny little bits. So there's a black wire and the white wire, and when you take this out of its packet, it will have a little short red wire just here, with the insulation stripped off it. So it's only that length. What I've already done is I have soldered on and heat shrinked a piece of flexible wire. Really, that's all you need. This is part of an old earphone set that didn't work anymore, so I've just used that, stripped the end, and I've soldered it onto the red connector, red wire. That's as far as I am at the moment. Right, back to this drawing. So we've got on the end, we've got a 510 connector, then those white bits that hold the voltage regulator. We've got a black wire going up, which is going to go up the bowl up to the slightly stripped bit there, and the LED bit is going to finish up top center, hopefully. The white wire goes straight onto that same LED board, and the red wire, which is a little short red wire at the moment, it only comes out that far, and that's what I've now already done the first connection. This wire will finish up going up the bowl again, over to the battery positive. So let's take it over that long route. So we've got just 4 solder joints. That's 1, 2, and we have got to make a joint on this little strip bit of wire up here. Put a wire on there, and that's got to go down to the bottom battery, ground or negative, whatever you want to call it. So we got 4 solder joints to do, and glue the end in. Well, the last thing we do really is glue the positive battery on, and at that time we'll have a working pipe. Then what you finish off with on top as a dressing really to the top of the bowl, and for something to retain the battery. You know, there's many ways to do that, but I'm going to deal with the straightforward way that I'm going to do this. You know, you can even shove a magnet in the bottom of this to hold the battery in position, or you can use, which I will be using for this, just blue tack around the top to glue something on there to hold the whole thing together steady. So I'm just going to concentrate on the simple way that I'm going to do this one. I'll say simple, can be a bit fiddly here and there, but it's doable. Right. Because of the size of this bowl and the length of this stem, we can see that that the length of this is the automatic switch, the way it came, that the length is going to work out fine. So that goes in through the stem, up the back end of the bowl, which is too long for, and then it will be bent over to come over to the center of the top of the bowl. If your bowl is much larger, or your stem is an inch longer or whatever, then your LED is not going to finish up in the center of the bowl. So what you need to do is decide, do you want to maybe drill a small hole up here somewhere to get the LED coming out and put some kind of a little see-through cover on there, or do you want to cut the black wire and the white wire and just put 2 1-inch or whatever 1-inch extension wires in there, heat shrink sleeved, so that you have got the LED coming out at the top of, at the top center of the bowl. So you have to decide that before you start. Obviously, if it's, you know, you'll get another pipe where the whole thing is where the auto switch is going to be too much for, if you're going to put it straight into a bowl that finishes right, it's just basically a bowl with a 510 connector in the end, then you're either going to have to decide that you want to shorten these wires so that it finishes on the top, or you might want to see if you can bend them over and back to take up the extra wire length. Right, am I ready to roll? Right, like I said, I've already done this first wire connection, which is this black wire, which is eventually going to go up to the top of the battery. The top of the battery, which I have already roughed it up a little bit with either the file or a piece of sandpaper, so that when I tin it, it will take better. I haven't done the bottom, so I've got to do that still. Okay, so in theory the thing is going to fit like that. This is going to go up the top to the battery, and now I've got to take a wire from the stripped bit of the auto switch, the stripped bit of the LED assembly wire, the black wire basically. I will solder, before I put it into the pipe, I'll solder a wire on there going downwards, which it needs to go down to the battery. and leave it a little bit too long for the moment. Right, what is too long? It's going to be up there. Just leave it very generous at the moment. Do I need to do this out of the bowl? I do it quite a bit too long. The first auto switch I did about a month ago, and you know, people say they're unreliable. Mine's been going pretty good, but maybe not unreliable, but temperamental, bore like. You know, sometimes I just won't go with. Sorry, I'm stripping this black wire to solder it on. Sometimes it just don't work with a normal soft suck. So you need to give him a harder, you need to give him a harder suck. Second pair of glasses. A few harder sucks and sort of it needs stoking sort of thing sometimes. So you do a couple of hard puffs and then make it softer and softer until you get it vaping nicely. One of the nuisances about using this wire that I'm using at the moment is that it's got braiding in it. Now if you've ever tinned a copper wire that's got braiding in it, that braiding being nylon fibre, when you try to tin the wire with it still in there, it really sort of makes a mess of the tinning. And makes it all burnt looking. Right, so I'm gonna tin this before I touch it onto the end of that stripped part. It's not going into the end. Right. So I've tinned that end. I don't know what length this is eventually going to be, so I'm not going to bother stripping the bottom end of that for now. And that's that little bit of fibre that I've chopped off. Okay. This is longer than it needs to be at the moment, the stripping. So I just tidy up the end. Right, this wire's got to come downwards from that LED assembly. So here goes. I can't put heat shrink on there because it's a closed loop, so I will just be using insulating tape. I'm not happy with the amount of solder I've got on there. Still not happy. So it's gonna mess it all up now. Ow, 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 ow. Right, looks a good enough joint. even with 2 pairs of glasses. I can't see properly. Now I've gone and done it. Just as well, I didn't think it was a good enough joint anyhow. Take it in around wherever you can. Not that I can here. Wherever you can, when you're soldering, you should try and also make, as well as it being a solder joint, you should also try and make a mechanical joint. And that's also if you're a dab hand. Which I'm not, because I don't have the dexterity anymore. But we get there. Brr. Right, a tiny bit of a mechanical joint there now. I got to burn himself. Right, is that good enough? Yeah, I don't think it is. I just want a big blob on there. I don't want to add time to the video. Come on. Right, I'm going to go with that and hope for the best. It's a tiny little tail there. Oh, sorry if I take this out of view, but when I'm concentrating, I need to see things anyhow. So. Right, a bit of insulating tape. Not too much. Just enough to insulate it, so that when I take it, well, so that I don't really want to stiffen the cable any more than it is. So just basically enough to cover the joint, maybe 1.5 times around the wire. Just enough so it doesn't short out on anything else, and still allows the flexibility, because that's got to come over to the top, to the center of the bowl. Right, before I try and bias that wire and trying to twist it, right, I've now got to get all of these into the bowl. He says bravely. Right, that's the one that comes down the battery. That's what would be the red wire. Right, into the bowl, here we go. Oh good, it came out. Right, that little PCB is getting stuck at the end before it can get in. Just wiggle it around. Here it comes, it's visible. Yeah, I didn't imagine that happening. By pre-soldering my black wire on there. I still think it might be easier to do that black wire when I did it just now. Because you could solder it once you put it all into the bowl. Just I think it makes it a bit more fiddly. When I did my first auto switch one, like I say, about a month ago, just after I finished it, I wrote down the method that I used, and a few little notes of what I shouldn't have done that way, and hopefully modify the next time. And this is one of those modifications where I soldered that black wire on while it was on the bench before it goes into the pipe. Grr. Right, I'll stand up and see where the black wire is, see if I can put it through. I think I can. Here it comes. Right, now I've got. Okay, I've now got sort of everything positioned. Right, next thing I've got to do is decide what length that black wire is going to be that goes to the bottom of the battery. And cut and strip it accordingly, and obviously solder it on. And I'm going to stop that going in too far at the moment, so that's just for just stick a toothpick in there. Just get them stiff wires. The black and white wires that go to the LED assembly are quite stiff, so they will take a bend quite easily, which I've just put a bend on them. Right, I'm going to go down in front of the stem and in underneath. It's basically the same as going here, down to the very bottom more or less, and into approximately the center, of the battery. So I'm deciding that my wire is going to be that long to go to the bottom. of the battery and hope that it works out. Also, I want to show this video. Right, strip it to a reasonable amount, probably at least 6 mil, quarter of an inch, whatever, because it's going on the bottom of the hardwired to the bottom of the battery. Right, I hate this. My sons have stolen my my wire cutters. Well, I think they have. I certainly can't find them. Right, that's my braiding again. It came away easily that time, the braiding. Right. These are my sharp cutters, she says bravely. Cut the braiding off. Tin the wire. Tin the wire. This one's got to go to the bottom ground connection of the battery. I removed the braiding. Right, battery. I had already decided, this is an E-Fest IMR. I had already decided that that little red strip was going to go down because of where I have roughened up the top surface. So the red wire is going to come around the back and it's going to go to that rough area there. So I'm going to tin the battery now. And this is going to do the same on the opposite side on the bottom. This is my little file, just roughing up the plating on the bottom of the battery so that it accepts the solder easier. Now here goes tin the bottom of the battery. Put the solder on the iron, heat it up, do the job as quickly as possible. Now that's another 2mm on there, it's thicker than the wire. But you got to do that as quickly as possible to not leave heat and damage the battery. Right, tin the top. Right, that is a good tin. Right, that's going to go over that way. It's got to come in from that side without too much twisting. I'm not overly happy with that tinning on the bottom. It's too tall and not wide enough. So here goes again. Heat the iron up. Take it more into the center, hopefully. A little bit better, I think. Get this wire ready to go straight on there. Right, this is where you need the extra set of hands, that is. Let's see if I can bias this wire. Wherever I put it, it wants to take a set. That battery needs to be sitting higher a little bit. So let's see if I can do that. Probably not. Okay. Sorry, you can't see this. But it's got to be. Yet again. It's better. Right. Here's hoping I haven't twisted the wire, well, that I've got the black wire to roughly the right length. I mean, the whole thing, it can be modified because you can twist the battery around a little bit. It looks, to me, it looks a bit too long. So let's try the battery in there and see what happens. It's going to twist over itself, so I don't want that. And that way, that's it. Get the red lead out of the way. Right, if you've had enough of this video by now, let me just show you, he says, bravely, show you the finish of the wiring job. And stripping I've stripped the top of what should be a red wire, kind of removed the braiding, right, this next bit always makes me jump, it's stupid. Right, watch the little LED at the top now, because when I touch this red wire to the top of the battery, really the whole thing is complete circuit wise, and it's up to you whether you stay with the video or whatever after that. But basically with this the job is done. He says, hoping that when I touch this on that the LED will flash. Here goes. Is it 3 times or 5 times it flashes? I forget. Here goes. 3 times. Right, so in theory, everything is in there and working. Looks like my LED is even too long, so I shall take the whole thing back over this way just to take some of the length up and to try and finish up with the and push it down the bowl a tiny bit, so that when I twist it over in the end it's going to finish up more or less central to the battery. Obviously it's only being suspended in there. It's not got anything else to do other than sit there and be pretty and advise us that that the switch is on or off or whatever, or when we put it on the ego charger that it does its normal flushing process.